Hello, everyone. Let's start that again. we'll we'll make sure that we flash a little edit mark right here. Stream starting, and then we'll go back. Perfect. Hello, everyone. Today we are taking a look at Astarion's Book of Hungers, which is a really interesting product and one that I've actually been actively excited for a variety of different reasons. So the main one is that I'm really excited to get further Baldur's Gate 3 content for D&D so people can kind of experience Baldur's Gate 3 in their own home games, and this very much is focused on Astarion. Beyond that, I'm obsessed with vampires in D&D, so I'm really thankful and excited to get some adventure content around Astarion, but also we've got the Dhampir species coming back with, I think, little to no changes of any kind coming from previous iterations of the Dhampir in 2014. But also, we're getting a whole lot of feats related to vampires and vampire activities. So that's really fun as well. A lot of this is very specific and story based, but it does remind me of a previous product that we had in second edition, which was Van Richten's Guide to Vampires, which I was a massive fan of. I still own my copy of it, and that really got very deep into a variety of different vampires. Different ways you can augment them, higher tier vampires, all kinds of stuff. Everything that you could possibly want for vampires was almost in Van Richten's Guide to Vampires in second edition. Really strong product, and I really kind of miss those little small hit pieces of content that were very specific to certain audiences. At the time, I thought it was fantastic, and art was also really amazing as well. So let's kind of. I'm not going to spoil the contents of the book or the adventure. There is an adventure and adventure hooks and guidelines and monster stats, and all of this is really useful for someone who wants a more focused vampiric campaign and/or also associated with Baldur's Gate 3. All of these feats are very useful if you are having a vampire-focused game or even one in Ravenloft. And I do wish we leaned a little bit more into all of it, like all vampire stuff. I think Astarion is a perfect hook into vampirism, 100%. And a lot of these feats could be used in just about any type of campaign. But I always want more vampire content, I guess. I'm always going to want more stuff out of it, but I think this is a really fun product. I like I said, I'm very excited for it. I would have delved a little bit more deep into the Forgotten Realms, but I was actually on my 10th anniversary, and I could absolutely not work. So 10th anniversary is a really big deal. Any anniversary is a really big deal. So let's kind of jump in, and I'm going to show my screen, theoretically. Go ahead and move over. And so this is the book of contents. I'm not going to ruin anything for anyone who's running an adventure, that type of stuff. I'm just kind of giving my overview of what we're seeing here in this supplement. I think I've always been a fan of this artwork. I think this is really fantastic. This is a tiefling that's being about to be feasted upon by Astarion. Really like that artwork. And let's go ahead and go to the introduction. We're not going to read through things by any means, but we're getting quite a bit of art. Nice little beginning about Astarion, and we get like a little bit of lore bits in this particular product, which is nice. So you're getting a little bit more backstory in terms of who created Astarion, his family, and kind of the locations he hangs out. I believe it's called Rat's Den, very specifically. And there's like an adventure that can be kind of started through there. And the whole reason I'm doing this stream is I feel like this is a product that's not getting enough attention. And I certainly gotta probably look back and look at the Forgotten Realms and all that stuff and those new books as well. But this is like, I love bites. Forgive the pun. I love bite-sized content. I love it. I wish we had more of this type of stuff on D&D Beyond with a little higher frequency of these little short bursts. And certainly we tried experiments when I was there with compendium content and stuff like this. This is one of those first little digital drops that actually has quite a bit of player-focused content, and I think that's something that we all would love to see more frequently on D&D Beyond. So this is the vampiric stuff that's focused, and they've got kind of a breakdown of how they use the supplement. They even have like a really lovely little this is when Astarion was born. This is when he was turned into a vampire. This is when the events of Baldur's Gate 3 occurs. I kind of love stuff like that. I like a little bit of a little bit of a dive, and then we have this really well-written letter from Astarion as well. So I think that's really cool. If you're a huge Astarion fan and you're a completionist, this art is gorgeous. Love this art. Absolutely stunning. Yeah. More vampire art, please. Just for no reason. With but what we do have here are a variety of character backgrounds. I'm just going to outline these. I'm not going to read through everything, but we've got the carouser. This is actually something I really quite like. The carouser is you grew up into adulthood basically living in the very heart of the city, like Baldur's Gate, and you are kind of a person about town. You know, you're going into like high stakes games or big parties, or you're always at the bar. You're basically a party person. You're a party kid vampire. You're not necessarily a vampire in this, but you get the tireless reveler feat, and obviously Astarion is probably got this background, frankly. That's really important, and I'm talking about the carouser for a reason, because I love wild magic sorcery and all things having to do with wild magic. So I'm actually going to jump to this feat in particular really quick. So tireless reveler is interesting, and I am obsessed with heroic inspiration for this reason, and we're going to just go into it real quick. This origin feat says when you an ally that you can see within 60 feet of you expends a heroic inspiration, you can gain heroic inspiration. If you lack it only, you can use this benefit a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a short or long rest. This is pretty situational. Except for wild magic sorcery, now in 2024's core rulebooks, has a very beneficial list of wild magic surges. Largely, I would say, like, I don't know, 80%, 75% is positive in that wild magic surge table, a lot less negatives when that happens. If you have heroic inspiration and you play, say, a human, you can drop heroic inspiration to reroll any roll in D&D flat out. Doesn't matter what type of roll it is, what type of die, you can reroll it. So heroic inspiration, you're a human, you roll in the wild magic surge table. There's a variety of options on this table. You got 1 in 25 chance of a lot of these different things. One of those things is getting a full extra action, which means you could technically cast 2 spells per turn. A bunch of other really crazy beneficial stuff, like reincarnate. Somewhat situational, but you can really... wild magic sorcery can really be gamed by the right mind and someone who is very good at math and prediction. I played a wild magic sorcerer for about 3 days straight at D&D in the castle, so I'm a big fan. So this is what's interesting about that, is if you're playing a wild magic sorcerer and you're burning heroic inspiration to try to get a positive effect from the wild magic sorcery table, then you have tireless reveler, the feat. If you see anyone else use a heroic inspiration in your party, you can decide to regain it as well. And if you're in a high-stakes campaign, people burning that heroic inspiration, and you're constantly able to reroll potentially on the wild magic surge table when it counts to get a positive result. So, yeah, that's very situational. But I just wanted to dive into that. That's the first thing that caught my eye because I'm really excited about that type of stuff. Let's go ahead and go back, though. So we get a lot of backgrounds. Carouser is a very Astarion-coded type background. We've had Vampire Devotee, that gives you the Vampire Plaything feat, which is interesting as well. I like all these. Vampire Survivor. So what we have is, we've got the party person, the carouser. We've got the Vampire Devotee. This is if you want to have a connection with a vampire within the city or the world. and you were a servant of theirs. And then vampire survivor, which is the opposite of that background. That's you are probably a vampire hunter and you've dealt with this kind of situation before. We've got the Vampire species, which I love. I think it's really fun. I like to pair it with weird things like the Barbarian Path of the World tree. You could be spider climbing and grab them with roots and then drop them. You can be up to some nasty stuff. And I always like a vampire barbarian because you really get to show off the strength that you would associate with being a vampire. So you get the spider climb really strong, resistance to necrotic damage. I don't believe any of this has actually changed. And then you can get a benefit to your attack rolls and your ability checks if you actually cause damage with one of your unarmed strikes as a Vampire as well. So, yeah. And yeah, certainly valid, heroic inspiration in my previous conversation, the previous rant that I just gave. It's not exceptionally rare, but this way you kind of feel like you always are going to have it. So that's the benefit I see there. So we've got the feats. We've got more feats than I expected for vampires. I know, like, sometimes feats and tiered feats can be kind of controversial. I almost wish we had more of these so that we could kind of, in a building block, and this is something I was working on my Patreon page, is a building block system for creating a vampire. This gets very close, but the intention of this is not for you to build a vampire. It's to have a vampire-themed character, and those are two different things. So, Tireless Reveler, we've already went into that. Vampire Hunter is pretty nice. You have advantage on checks to escape non-magical restraints, or the grappled condition, pretty good for, not being murdered by a vampire. And you've got a way to buff necrotic damage as well, so that's fun. Yeah, Vampire Monks would be exceptionally dangerous. I think Vampire Monks, I would go with the Way of Mercy. I believe that's what it's currently called. Because you have the Hand of Harm, you have the Hand of Heal, Vampire Way of Mercy, or Vampire Way of Shadow. Super fun, I think. And probably the one that benefits the most from being a Vampire, honestly. And you're getting that kind of nightmare fuel if you are a Shadow Monk or you're a Way of Mercy monk. Or, it's not even Way, it's Warrior of Mercy. I believe it's Warrior, not Way of. We got Vampire Plaything. The most thing I find interesting about this is a nasty little feat. You can use the dash and disengage action as a bonus action. And on top of this, you can constantly have a psychic connection to the vampire that you are associated with. Creepy. I love this. This is kind of like a mini Warlock Pact, and I think that's really fun and inventive, and a lot of people who have the fantasy of playing in a vampire-themed campaign, I think this really itches the scratch, and can be really interesting narratively for a long-term campaign where you constantly have this open connection to a vampire, and you may not even get along with this vampire anymore. You may be a former person who has that connection, but when you look at movies like Nosferatu, and, well, I mean, anything related to Dracula constantly has telepathy kind of associated with it, and nightmares, and that psychic connection. So I really think Vampire Plaything is actually really cool, especially for a heavy narrative-themed game, and is, again, kind of like a mini Warlock Pact. So, pretty cool. We've got little general feats, like Bloodlust. This can kind of get you a little bit more powerful as a Vampire, depending if you're attacking a creature that has the bloodied condition. You can get a little bit more hit points, and using your hit dice, you get some more hit points back every time you hit somebody. Bomber is interesting, and this is, you get a bonus to thrown weapons. It's really good if you're throwing acid, alchemist fire, holy water, that type of stuff. I'm not quite sure why my audio is low. I'll check. Huh. I can't turn it up. That's weird. I'll just try to talk closer to the mic. if that helps. Yeah, I have no idea why my audio would be lower right now. That's so weird. So we've got Coiling Mists, which is pretty situational, but you get the Fog Cloud spell, and you can actually extinguish non-magical flames and stuff like that. You can also reduce people's speed using Fog Cloud. A little bit of a nice AoE, so pretty fun. Let's see. We've got Delicious Pain. You can use your reaction after taking bludgeoning, slashing, piercing to gain resistance to all bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. That could get really nasty as well. Lightbringer is very situational, but if you're in a Ravenloft campaign and you're able to cast the light spell and you can make it officially sunlight, that's kind of OP. It's weird. This is so specific, and I don't mind specific at all. I want to see more feats that are like, this is for one player and one player only at your table. It does not need to be one size, fits all. The fact that you can turn light from the light spell into sunlight is a nasty bit of business, and you can also possibly regain hit points from being exposed to sunlight. This is interesting. If you're in Ravenloft, you're not getting a lot of sunlight. But you can create your own sunlight and then get some hit points back. But this is how do I put this? You do so much damage. Isn't it like 20 radiant damage per turn when a vampire is in sunlight? That is nasty, 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 nasty business. And if a character is playing that in like a game like Curse of Strahd or any type of vampire game, you're burning vampires. This is a nuclear bomb. Are you going to be able to use this all the time? Will it come up from game to game? This is really like a Dungeon Master buy-in type feat. So if you are in a vampire campaign and you're facing them all the time, this is kind of really crazily powerful. If you're in a campaign and you never are running into vampires, this isn't that powerful, and it's weak. If you're in a campaign where you're meeting vampires sporadically, that's the balance. The balance is so much based off any creature that is affected by sunlight. It's kind of wild, and that takes a lot of buy-in from the Dungeon Master. Yeah, it's 20 damage per turn, coming from a cantrip, thanks to a feat. But again, this is how many creatures in D&D are affected and hurt by sunlight. Not a ton, but you're going to just burn the crap out of them by doing so. So, yeah, it's this is an interesting feat. It's finicky. I'm not against finicky because it depends on the game that you're playing. And I'm very curious how Dungeon Masters experience this feat. Because like I said, if you're fighting like Strahd, or you're fighting, any of the vampire characters that are presented within this adventure, whoo, that is going to be nasty, nasty business. So let's go and move on. We've got Love Bites. You attack someone with a melee weapon or unarmed strike, and you give them the charmed condition 0 save after you do so till the end of their next turn. Putrefy. This is having to do with the poison condition, necrotic damage. Yeah, when you do necrotic damage, people get the poison condition. Again, nasty business. And also, that's not a save either. And this is one of the advantages of playing the Way of Mercy monk is you can just give someone the poison condition and there's no save. And that is giving them disadvantage on all their attack rolls. That's huge. If you're playing a Warrior of Mercy monk, that's fantastic. So just flat out giving someone the poison condition is pretty dangerous sometimes. Rebuke, it's exactly what it sounds like. You rebuke them with radiant damage. can be nice over time. Treacherous allure. Again, you're getting something like the charm person effect. So you're playing a Dhampir, and now you have more feats that allow you to have that kind of mesmerizing, charming effect that you associate with being a Dhampir or vampire. So, once you're that species, you have the options to get a little bit more what you want through these feats that you expect. Vampire touched, same thing. Now you're getting, even if you're not playing a Dhampir, you can at least get access to the spider climb ability that you can cast on yourself and yourself alone, which is okay. And again, like, you don't necessarily want to be a full vampire, but it's fun to be able to have the option to get spider climb. If you're playing a Gloomstalker Ranger and you pop that in, pretty nasty business. Gloomstalker also on top of the ceiling can be pretty cool and effective. So, epic boons, boon of the blazing dawn. Yeah, these are crazy boons. Bursts of sunlight, radiant strikes with your weapon. High level campaign stuff. This is all like level 19 plus. Boon of the looming shadows. Again, you can use the dodge action as a bonus action, and then when you attack, your reach for melee weapons increases by 10 feet. It's pretty decent. Boon of misty escape. Exactly what it sounds like. You drop to 1 hit point, and you can cast gaseous form. So we've got a lot of, hey, I want that feeling of being a vampire. Some of these feats are situational, but that's a conversation you should be having with your dungeon master anyways. This is not a PvP game, and you're not trying to like cheese the game necessarily. You're just trying to figure out what works and what doesn't for you. But these feats are really fun. And so if I wanted to build a vampire, I would choose Dhampir as a species, which is really strong already. Coiling Mists is really fun to get that fog cloud kind of going, towards your enemies. And then also the fact that fog cloud will reduce people's speed and nullify things like torches and sunlight. If you're using Coiling Mists as a Gloomstalker, you're forcing a situation where people are not relying on their infravision. So that's really nice. And then Bomber, situational, Bloodlust, you're getting a little bit more out of the bloody condition and stuff like that. So, and then we've got several things that are kind of the charm effect. And we've got nice hunter stuff. Now, after all of this, we've got a bunch of adventure content having to do with Astarion. You learn a little bit more about his hangouts in Baldur's Gate 3. And there's plenty of content there and different monster stat blocks, demons, that kind of thing, that will kind of flesh out both the kind of stuff that you're looking for in Baldur's Gate. And that's all I'm going to show because I don't want to ruin this kind of like miniature adventure, and it's got a lot of player-focused content. But I wanted to do this video very briefly in this stream because I really wanted to talk about, like, hey, I really appreciate content like this. I don't need a full vampire book necessarily, but I do love little bite-sized pieces of content that have player-focused content in them, and also something for a dungeon master. I do love stuff like this. I almost wish I had stuff like this monthly. In like a kind of a magazine form, but yeah, I think this is really cool. I wish people talked about more. I'd love to talk to the developers about how they came about with making this product and finding the voice of Astarion and trying to create an adventure that felt true to Baldur's Gate 3. There's a lot to unpack in this little piece of content. So if you love Baldur's Gate 3, if you love vampires, if you enjoy playing Dhampirs or hunting vampires, yeah, this is the product for you. And I'd love to see a lot more content like this, frankly. Yeah, that's my opinion. Let me know what your opinion is in the comments below. That always helps also the algorithm of YouTube. Like and subscribe and all that. But I actually really want to know how people feel, after buying this, what they think of the product, what they think of player-focused content with a higher frequency. And, this is content. I always see sometimes people like to complain, like call things like this DLC, that you cannot fit everything into a physical book, or the timetables do not align. And this is really important for people who are talking about books and publishing in the tabletop space. And even the video game space to a certain degree, though I know a lot of video games, it feels like video games have kind of cheesed some of this, and they've actually created this content ahead of time. We have physical restraints when creating a book, right? Like, we can't fit everything into a book necessarily, or it's not on theme. This feels really weird, possibly, to have randomly in the Forgotten Realms full physical book, and that would cause it to push other things out of those products. And also, it takes time. So you have to finish a book a year to 6 months in advance of publishing that book and getting a physical form. So I am very pro digital content along with a book, because you might never have gotten that content otherwise. And we do live in a digital age. I think it's important to embrace that, because, in the same way that we used to embrace Dungeon and Dragon magazine content like that, I think it's important to always keep in mind that I've never felt like any of these digital drops were any type of cash grab. I always feel like, oh, this is content that we didn't have time to get to. And I think it's really cool. So I'd love more content like this from all publishers, more little miniature digital drops. It's also why I think we love Unearthed Arcana. It gives us a reason to get excited about D&D in between books. And I think that's why UA is so very important. So that's my 30-minute rant about vampires and digital content. I hope you enjoyed it. The art is really, really cool. I really like this. And of course, I'd love to see physical versions of these products, but maybe we'll get those down the line. Maybe we'll have like some of this content shoved into maybe a future Ravenloft product or something like that, or a vampire product. That would be cool as well. Something that like kind of evolves. So, do we have any questions in chat that I missed? I don't know. I'm gonna go and check. No, I think we're good. Like I said, let me know what you think about this. I think it's really cool. So, and I think we all are kind of still yearning to spend a little bit more time with the characters of Baldur's Gate 3. Astarion is one of the big heroes of that situation, one of the most popular characters. I'm a little biased as well, because he's part of that core 4 people I had in all 3 live streams that I did. I was actually looking at those numbers, and those numbers are crazy. The Gen Con show I did with the cast of Baldur's Gate 3 got 1.5 million views. That was with Brenly Mulligan as well, and it's Bria and Anjali, and Neil Newbon, and Sam Bayart. Thank you, Mark T. Mark T says it looks super fun. I think it does look super fun. And then I got 1 million views on the MCM London game with the Baldur's Gate 3 cast, and Jeremy Crawford dungeon mastered that one. And that one was really fun because I wrote that adventure to cause the entire group to become vampires, and then Astarion, Neil Newbon, had to basically babysit everybody in that live stream because they were never vampires before. So that was super fun. And then the MagicCon game, which I got, is past 1 million at this point as well, with the Baldur's Gate 3 cast. So really fun trilogy, and that was a Bria coming back to be Dungeon Master. She absolutely killed it. So yeah, I love the Baldur's Gate 3 cast. Super fun characters, really fun. So check out those live streams, everybody. I gotta go, but I wanted to just talk about this project and get on my hobby horse about why I think it's super cool. Have a great day. Thank you so much for watching.